When did your childhood end? I was 9 years old, living in a moldy trailer home with my family, when my big brother came home with a stack of $200 cash. I had no idea how he got the job because he was 12. Meanwhile, Mom was beaming with pride. That night, I woke up to Mom kissing my brother on the forehead. "You're nothing like your worthless father. You actually take care of me." She held on to him too long, and Ace looked uncomfortable. Things changed fast after that. Our generic brand cereal was replaced with actual Lucky Charms. Mom got her nails done with little rhinestones, but Ace had bruises on his arms. When I asked where the money came from, he'd just ruffle my hair and say, "Just helping some guys with deliveries. Don't worry about it." But his voice was quieter than usual. And 2 weeks in, Ace tried to stop. I heard them arguing in the living room. Mom's voice went cold. "Your sister Amelia's only 4, and you want her to starve? You want her to go without medicine when she gets sick? You're the man of the house now? Act like it." That night, I watched him leave the trailer at 11 p.m. with his black hoodie pulled up tight. I heard him come back at 3 a.m. and try to sneak into his old room, but Mom was waiting. "You made $500 tonight," she whispered, pointing to her bedroom. "Real men don't sleep in kids' rooms. You deserve his spot." The next morning, she made him move all his stuff into her room. Every morning, she'd make him tell her she looked pretty, had to hug her before his deliveries, and tell her he loved her. After a month, his co-workers started demanding he move more product, said a kid his age should be pushing twice as much. My mom even suggested that he take Amelia with him to make it seem less suspicious. My brother started getting these dark circles under his eyes from barely sleeping. Mom would keep him up talking about how proud she was, how he was so much better than Dad, how they didn't need anyone else. She started buying matching clothes for them, called it their thing. When I turned 10, Mom got greedier. She'd take all his money, then go buy herself new clothes while we ate ramen for the third night straight. Amelia would ask why Ace wasn't eating, and he'd say he wasn't hungry, giving her his portion. Once Ace tried to keep $20, and Mom lost it. "After everything I've done for you, you're selfish like your father." For the next few days, he went to school with no lunch. And on the 4th day, my mom's phone rang. It was a school counselor. "Mrs. Johnson, we're concerned about your son. He's been falling asleep in class, his grades have dropped, and, oh, he's just been helping with family responsibilities." My mom's voice was sugar sweet. "You know how it is being a single mother with 3 kids. The counselor pushed harder. "We'd like him to speak with someone, just to make sure everything's okay at home." The next day, when I got home from school, Mom cornered me. "You're 10 and a half now, old enough to be homeschooled by your brother and help him with deliveries." Before I could say anything, Ace stormed into the room. "No! Don't you dare bring him into this!" His voice cracked. Mom grabbed Amelia, who was watching TV. "Fine. Then maybe your sister is old enough to help. She's almost 5. Mom's face turned purple when Ace lunged forward. "I am your mother! You have to do what I say!" Smack. He opened his mouth to say more, and she slapped him across the face before tearing his mattress apart. Amelia started crying, and Mom yelled, "See what you made me do? You scared your sister!" Underneath the bed frame, she found a bag that looked like flour and held it up. "Watch what happens when you disrespect me." She then walked over to the toilet bowl and dumped it all in before flushing it down the drain. Ace went so pale I thought he might faint. "Mom, they fronted me that. You don't understand what you just did." His voice was barely a whisper. His phone started buzzing nonstop, text after text. It was the first time I ever saw him cry. Mom just kept yelling about respect and responsibility. Amelia was hiding behind the couch, confused why everyone was screaming. At 3 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Ace looked at me and said, "I need to tell you something about Mom, about why Dad really left." But he never got to finish. Ace stood up and walked to the door. I stayed in the hallway where the shadows were thick enough to hide me. He opened it just a crack, and 2 men pushed their way inside. The bigger one had a scar running down his neck, and the other wore a baseball cap pulled low. The one with the scar did all the talking. He told Ace they'd be back tomorrow night with a different kind of conversation if the money wasn't there. His voice was quiet, but it made my skin feel cold. Ace just nodded. His face went completely blank, like nobody was home behind his eyes anymore. The men looked around our trailer, taking in the peeling wallpaper and the couch with the broken spring. The one in the baseball cap laughed and said something about how Ace better not be holding out on them. Then they left. Ace closed the door and locked it. He slid down to the floor with his back against the door and just sat there. I counted in my head. He didn't move for 20 minutes. His eyes were open, but he wasn't blinking much. I almost went over to him, but something about the way he looked scared me too much. Mom's bedroom door opened. She came out wearing her pink bathrobe with her hair all messy from sleep. She walked right past me like I wasn't even there. She sat down next to Ace on the floor and used her baby voice to ask if he wanted some hot chocolate. She reached out and started stroking his hair like he was 5 years old. She told him she knew he'd figure it out because he was so smart and responsible. She kept petting his hair, and I watched Ace's jaw get tight, but he didn't pull away from her. He just sat there and let her touch him while staring at nothing. Mom eventually stood up and said she was going back to bed. She bent down and kissed the top of his head before walking back to her room. I waited until I heard her door close. Then I walked over and sat down next to Ace on the floor. We sat there quiet for a while. He finally turned his head to look at me. His voice came out as a whisper when he started talking. He said Dad left because Mom was doing the same thing to him, treating him like a husband instead of a partner, getting angry when he had boundaries, making everything about what she needed. He said Dad tried to take us, but Mom threatened to call the police. She said she'd tell them Dad was kidnapping us. I felt my stomach drop. Ace kept going. He said Dad sent letters for 2 years, but Mom burned them all. We never got to read a single one. He found one once that got delivered when Mom wasn't home. It said Dad was working on getting us out. It promised he didn't abandon us. I felt like the floor just disappeared under me. I spent 2 whole years thinking Dad just didn't care about us anymore, thinking he left and forgot we existed. But he was trying. He was fighting for us, and we never knew. My throat got tight, and I couldn't talk for a minute. When I could finally speak, I asked Ace how much money the dealers wanted. He said $3,000 by tomorrow night. His voice cracked when he said it. He told me there was no way he could make that much in one day, even if he worked all day and all night without stopping. I watched him realize out loud what that meant. He said they were going to hurt him, or worse, they'd take it out on me and Amelia. The sky started getting lighter outside our window. Mom's alarm went off in her bedroom. Ace stood up and I followed him to the kitchen. Mom came out already dressed with her makeup done. She was wearing a new bracelet I'd never seen before. Her nails were freshly done with little flowers painted on them. She did her usual morning thing. She stood in front of Ace and waited. He told her she looked pretty. His voice sounded dead. She smiled and opened her arms for a hug. Ace hugged her and told her he loved her. She held on too long, like always. When she finally let go, Ace picked up his backpack. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it twice. Mom kissed his cheek and told him to have a good day. He walked out the door without looking back. I got ready for school, but my brain felt fuzzy. I couldn't focus on anything my teacher said during class. The words just floated past me without sticking. During lunch, I walked down the hallway toward the cafeteria. I saw Allison standing by her office door. She was talking to another teacher, but she noticed me staring. She finished her conversation and walked over. She asked if I wanted to come talk in her office. I nodded before I could change my mind. My legs felt shaky walking into her office. She closed the door and told me to sit wherever I was comfortable. I sat in the chair across from her desk. She didn't push me to talk right away. She just waited. Finally, I started telling her. I told her about the deliveries, about the men at the door last night, about how Ace hasn't eaten a full meal in weeks because he gives his food to Amelia. My voice stayed really quiet because I was scared Ace would somehow find out I told. Allison listened without interrupting. She wrote things down in a notebook, but she kept looking at me to show she was paying attention. When I finished, she put down her pen. She explained that she was legally required to report what I told her. She said it was because children were in danger. She promised the goal was to help our family, not punish us. But I could tell from her face that she knew this was really serious. She asked if I felt safe going home today. I lied and said yes. I didn't know what else to say. I didn't want to go to some stranger's house. Allison gave me a long look like she knew I was lying, but she didn't push it. She told me she was here if I needed anything. School ended and I walked home slower than usual. When I got there, Ace was already in the living room. He was pacing back and forth in the tiny space between the couch and the TV. His phone was in his hand, and he kept checking it every few seconds. When I walked in, he looked up at me. The fear in his eyes was so strong I almost told him what I did. I almost confessed that I talked to Allison, but the words got stuck in my throat and wouldn't come out. I stood there frozen while Ace kept pacing. His phone buzzed again and he flinched like it had shocked him. He didn't even look at the screen this time, just kept walking back and forth in that tiny space between the couch and the TV stand. His breathing was fast and shallow. I wanted to say something, but my brain felt empty. The front door suddenly opened and Mom walked in carrying 4 big shopping bags. The bags had logos from stores at the mall across town. Ace stopped pacing and stared at the bags. Mom was humming some song and smiling. She set the bags down on the kitchen counter and started pulling out clothes. A new shirt with the tags still on, a pair of jeans, some kind of jacket with fake fur on the hood. She held up the jacket and asked if we thought it looked good on her. Ace's voice came out flat when he asked how much she spent. Mom laughed and waved her hand like he'd said something funny. She told him it was none of his business and that she deserved nice things after working so hard. Ace pointed out that she didn't work. Mom's smile got tight around the edges. She said raising 3 kids were harder than any job and that real men don't question how women spend money. Real men just provide it and feel proud they can take care of their family. I watched something change in Ace's face. His jaw went slack and his eyes looked empty, like someone had reached inside and turned off a switch. Mom kept pulling clothes out of the bags and didn't even notice. She was too busy admiring a new pair of shoes. Ace walked past her to Mom's bedroom without saying anything. I heard him moving things around in there but couldn't tell what he was doing. Mom finally noticed he'd left and called after him that dinner would be ready in an hour. Her voice was cheerful, like nothing was wrong, like we weren't about to lose everything. Amelia came out of her room and asked if she could have a snack. Mom gave her some crackers and turned on the TV for her. I sat on the couch next to Amelia but couldn't focus on the cartoons. My stomach felt sick. The sun went down and Mom made spaghetti from a jar. We ate at the wobbly kitchen table that only had 3 working chairs, so someone always had to use the stool. Ace barely touched his food. He kept checking his phone under the table. Mom didn't notice because she was talking about maybe getting her hair done next week. After dinner, I helped clean up while Ace went back to Mom's bedroom. At 10 o'clock, I heard the front door open. Mom's voice called out asking where Ace was going so early. He said he had extra deliveries tonight. Mom told him to be safe, and I heard her make a kissing sound. The door closed. I waited 5 minutes, then told Mom I needed to use the bathroom. She was watching some reality show and waved me away without looking. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. The loose tile in the corner by the toilet was easy to lift. Ace had shown me the hiding spot months ago when he needed somewhere to keep the burner phone during the day. The phone was there under the tile. I pulled it out, and the screen lit up. 15 new messages, all from a contact labeled Nicholas. My hands shook as I opened the messages. The first few were asking where Ace was and why he wasn't answering. Then they got mean. Nicholas said Ace better not be avoiding him. Said the debt was growing every hour with interest. The next message made my chest tight. Nicholas wrote that if Ace didn't have the money by tomorrow night, they'd start a payment plan using family assets. The last message mentioned the little one specifically. It said Amelia was cute and probably worth something to the right people. I felt like I was going to throw up. I ran to Mom's room and grabbed her old digital camera from the closet shelf. She never used it anymore since she got a phone with a camera. I went back to the bathroom and took pictures of every message on the phone screen. My hands were shaking so bad some of the pictures came out blurry, but I kept taking more until I had clear shots of everything. I put the phone back under the tile exactly how I found it. Then I hid the camera in my backpack under my dirty gym clothes. I went to my room and got in bed with my clothes still on. I could hear the TV through the wall. Mom was still watching her show. I tried to close my eyes, but every time I did, I saw that message about Amelia, about her being worth something. My brain kept making up terrible pictures of what that meant. Through the thin wall, I started hearing Mom's voice. She wasn't talking to anyone, just talking to herself in that weird, happy voice she used with Ace sometimes. She was saying how proud she was of her man, how he took such good care of her, how they didn't need anyone else because they had each other. She kept calling him her man over and over, not her son, her man, like he was her husband or boyfriend. It made my skin feel crawly and wrong. I pulled my pillow over my head, but I could still hear her voice going on and on. At 2 in the morning, I heard the front door open again. Footsteps went to the bathroom. Then I heard crying. Ace was trying to be quiet, but the walls were too thin. He was making these choking sounds like he couldn't breathe right. Mom's bedroom door opened. Her footsteps went down the hall. She knocked on the bathroom door. Her voice went all soft and sweet, asking if Ace wanted to talk about what was wrong. Ace told her to leave him alone. Mom sounded hurt. She said she was just trying to be there for him, that she loved him and wanted to help. Ace didn't answer. After a minute, Mom's footsteps went back to her room. The bathroom door finally opened, and Ace went into Mom's room. I heard the bed creak, then nothing. I still couldn't sleep. My alarm went off at 7, and I felt like I hadn't slept at all. I got dressed and went to the kitchen. Mom was already up making coffee. She was wearing one of her new outfits. Amelia was eating cereal at the table. Then I heard voices at the front door. Mom went to answer it, and her whole face changed. She got this big fake smile. A woman was standing in the doorway. I recognized her. Noelle, the CPS lady who came before. Mom's voice went all sugar-sweet, explaining that she'd had to reschedule the last appointment because of a family emergency. But everything was fine now. Totally fine. Noelle said she needed to see all 3 kids together. Mom called for Ace, but nobody answered. Mom checked her bedroom and came back looking confused. She said Ace must have left early for school. Noelle wrote something in a little notebook. That made Mom's smile get tighter. Noelle came inside and kneeled down to talk to me and Amelia. She asked if we were doing okay. if we had enough food, if we felt safe. I tried to answer normal, but my voice sounded weird and high. I said yes to everything. Amelia just nodded and kept eating her cereal. Noelle asked a few more questions about school and if anyone ever hurt us. I shook my head. Noelle watched my face for a long time before writing more stuff in her notebook. After Noelle left, Mom's fake smile disappeared instantly. She closed the door hard and turned to look at me. Her voice had an edge to it when she asked if I'd said anything to anyone at the school. I shook my head fast. Mom stared at me for what felt like forever. Then she said she hoped I knew that talking to outsiders would destroy our family, that people wouldn't understand and would take us away from each other, that I needed to be loyal. I nodded. Mom's face relaxed a little and she told me to get ready for school. At the school, I couldn't focus on anything my teacher said. The words just floated past me. During lunch, I was walking to the cafeteria when I saw Allison in the hallway. She was talking to another teacher, but when she saw me, she stopped. She walked over and quietly asked if I could come to her office after lunch. I nodded. My legs felt shaky walking to her office later. She closed the door and told me to sit down. Then she said that CPS was opening an investigation into our family, that I did the right thing by telling her what was happening. Her voice was calm and steady. She asked if I had any proof of what was going on, any evidence that could help. I suddenly remembered the camera in my backpack. I told her about the burner phone and the messages from Nicholas, about the threats. Allison's face got very serious. She explained that physical evidence could help protect Ace and get us all to safety faster. She pulled out a small piece of paper and wrote down her personal cell phone number. She told me to hide it somewhere safe and call her if anything bad happened. I took the paper and folded it up tiny. Then I stuck it in the bottom of my shoe under the insole where nobody would find it. That afternoon, I waited by the school entrance until the buses left and most kids were gone. I walked home fast, but not running because I didn't want anyone to notice me. The trailer park was quiet when I got there. Mom's car wasn't in the driveway yet. I unlocked the door and went straight to the bathroom. My fingers fumbled with the loose tile by the toilet. The burner phone was right where I'd hidden it. I grabbed it and shoved it deep into my backpack. Then I ran to the kitchen and found Mom's old digital camera in the junk drawer. I checked the screen and all the photos of the text messages were still there. I put the camera in my backpack too and zipped it closed. That's when I heard tires on gravel outside. Mom's car door slammed. I walked out of the kitchen trying to look normal. Mom came through the door with her purse and a coffee cup. She smiled when she saw me and said she had a fun idea. She was taking Amelia to get her nails done like a big girl. They could match, and it would be so cute. Her voice had that high, excited tone she got when she was about to spend money. I nodded and said that sounded nice. Mom went to get Amelia from her room and I clutched my backpack straps. Mom had no idea what was coming tonight. She didn't know about the dealers or the deadline or any of it. She was just planning nail colors while everything was about to explode. Mom and Amelia left 20 minutes later. I watched through the window as Mom buckled Amelia into her car seat. They drove away and the trailer felt empty and wrong. I sat on the couch with my backpack still on my shoulders. The clock on the wall ticked loud. 15 minutes passed. Then I heard footsteps on the porch and Ace came in. He didn't say anything to me. He walked straight down the hall to Mom's bedroom. I followed him and stood in the doorway. Ace was pulling open Mom's dresser drawers one by one. He moved clothes aside and checked under things. In the bottom drawer, he found a stack of cash held together with a rubber band. He took it out and counted it slowly. His lips moved, but no sound came out. When he finished counting, he just stared at the money in his hands. He said out loud that it wasn't even close to enough. His voice was flat and empty. I asked how much was there, and he said maybe $200. The dealers wanted $3,000. He put the money back exactly where he found it and closed the drawer. Ace finally looked at me standing in the doorway. His face was different somehow, blank and calm in a way that scared me more than when he was panicking. He told me to take Amelia to Chuck's trailer tonight after dinner. He said to stay there no matter what happened. His voice didn't change tone at all when he said it. I asked what was going to happen, and he just shook his head. He said if anything went wrong, Chuck would know what to do. I wanted to ask more questions, but something about the way Ace was looking at me made the words stick in my throat. He walked past me out of Mom's room, and I heard him go into the bathroom. The door clicked shut. An hour later, Mom and Amelia came back. I heard them before I saw them. Mom was laughing about something, and Amelia was giggling. They came through the door and both held up their hands. Their nails were bright pink with little sparkles. Mom kept saying how cute they looked together. She asked where Ace was, and I said he was in his room. Mom didn't seem to notice that I was sitting on the couch with my backpack still on. She pulled out her phone and ordered pizza. She said it was a celebration of her and Amelia's special day. Amelia climbed onto the couch next to me and showed me her nails up close. I told her they looked really pretty. My backpack felt heavy against my spine. When the pizza came, Mom made us all sit at the little kitchen table together. She kept trying to get Ace to smile. She asked him to tell Amelia how pretty her nails were. Ace looked at Amelia's hands and said they were very pretty, but his voice sounded like a robot reading words off a card. Mom's smile got tighter around the edges. She asked Ace what was wrong with him. He said he was tired. Mom's voice got sharp when she said he should be grateful she was such an understanding mother. Most moms wouldn't let their kids be moody at family dinners. Ace just nodded and took a tiny bite of pizza. I watched him chew it slowly like it hurt to swallow. Mom kept talking about the nail salon and how nice the lady was and how she might go back next week. Nobody else said anything. After dinner, Mom told Ace to come watch TV with her. She patted the couch cushion next to her. I stood up and said I was taking Amelia to see Chuck's new puppy next door. Mom barely looked at me. She was focused on getting Ace to sit down. She said that was fine and to be back before bedtime. Ace caught my eye for just a second and nodded so slightly I almost missed it. This was what he wanted. I took Amelia's hand and grabbed my backpack. We walked out the front door and down the steps. The sun was starting to set and the sky was turning orange. Chuck's trailer was right next to ours. I knocked on his door and waited. Chuck opened the door looking confused. He was an older guy with gray hair and a flannel shirt. He looked at me and Amelia and asked what we needed. I whispered that Ace said to bring Amelia here and stay. Chuck's whole face changed. His eyebrows went down and his mouth got serious. He opened the door wider and told us to come in. Amelia asked where the puppy was. Chuck looked even more confused, and I realized he didn't have a puppy. I said sorry I made that up, so Mom would let us come over. Chuck told Amelia she could watch cartoons on his TV and led her to the living room. He turned on the TV and found a cartoon channel. Then he took me into the kitchen where Amelia couldn't hear us. I told Chuck everything in a rushed whisper. About the dealers and the debt, and how Mom flushed the product down the toilet. About Nicholas and the threats, and how tonight was the deadline. About how Ace had been doing deliveries for months, and Mom took all the money. The words came out fast and messy. Chuck's face got harder with every sentence. When I finished, he pulled his phone out of his pocket. He said this was way beyond neighbor help, and he was calling the police. I felt my whole chest get lighter and heavier at the same time. Relief that someone was finally doing something. Terror about what would happen next. Chuck dialed 911 and started talking to the dispatcher. He gave our address and said there was a dangerous situation involving minors. That's when we heard it through the wall. A car pulling up outside. The engine cut off. Car doors opened and slammed shut. Voices carried through the thin walls between the trailers. I recognized Nicholas's voice. He was talking to someone else. Their footsteps crunched on gravel heading toward our front door. Chuck looked at me and told me and Amelia to stay inside. He walked over and locked his front door. He was still on the phone with 911 telling them the situation was happening right now. I stood frozen in Chuck's kitchen, listening to Nicholas bang on our trailer door. Mom's voice came through the wall, sounding high and confused. She asked what this was about and who was at the door this late. Nicholas said her son owed him money and she needed to get Ace to the door right now. Mom's voice changed fast. She got defensive and loud, asking what money and who did this man think he was showing up at her home. I heard footsteps inside our trailer, and then the door opened wider. Ace's voice was quiet, almost too quiet to hear through the wall. He told Mom to go back inside. Mom asked what was going on, and Ace repeated that she should go inside now. Nicholas cut in and said the debt was $4,000 now because of the delay and interest. His voice was cold and businesslike. Ace's response was so soft I barely caught it. He said he didn't have that much. Nicholas laughed and said they'd take payment another way then. Chuck was still holding his phone to his ear, and the dispatcher's voice came through faintly. She said officers were 5 minutes out and to stay on the line. Chuck nodded, even though she couldn't see him, and kept the phone pressed to his ear. Through the wall, I heard Mom's voice get louder. She was asking Nicholas what he meant about money and what was Ace involved in. Nicholas said something I couldn't make out, and then Mom started screaming. She told Nicholas to get away from his son. Nicholas laughed again and said her son had been working for him for months. He asked where she thought her new clothes came from, and the fancy nails and the food that wasn't generic brand anymore. Mom made a choking sound like someone punched her in the stomach. Ace was saying something, but his voice was drowned out by Mom yelling. She kept screaming at Nicholas to leave and get off her property. Nicholas said she should ask Ace what he'd been delivering at 3 a.m. The words hung there for a second, and then Mom went quiet. Through the wall, I heard Ace trying to explain. His voice cracked when he said he was just trying to help the family. Nicholas interrupted and said time was up. There was a sound like someone grabbing something, and then Ace cried out. Mom's voice came back even louder than before. She was screaming that she would call the police right now. Nicholas said, "Go ahead. They'd be very interested in where all that money came from. He said they'd want to know how a 12-year-old was making thousands of dollars. Mom's voice faltered. She said something quiet that I couldn't hear. Nicholas said exactly, so maybe she should shut up and let the adults handle this. That's when Ace yelled. His voice was desperate and breaking. He said his mom didn't know anything. He said he lied to her about having a real job, and she thought he was working at a restaurant. He said she was innocent and didn't know what he was doing. Mom made a sound like she was crying. Nicholas laughed and said that was sweet, but the debt didn't care who knew what. He said Ace owed $4,000, and if he couldn't pay it in cash, they'd find other ways to collect. I heard a car engine outside and my whole body went stiff. I thought it was more dealers coming to back Nicholas up. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. Chuck must have thought the same thing because his hand tightened on my shoulder. But then a voice called out, identifying himself as police and telling everyone to stay where they were. Chuck let out a long breath next to me and squeezed my shoulder. The dispatcher on his phone said officers had arrived on scene. Through Chuck's front window, I could see lights flashing red and blue against the side of our trailer. Detective Derek's voice carried through the night air. He was asking what was going on here and telling Nicholas to stay put. Nicholas said he was just leaving and there was no problem. Derek told him to stop walking and put his hands where he could see them. Another police car pulled up and a second officer got out. I watched through the window as they separated everyone. Nicholas stood near his car with his hands visible. His partner, who I hadn't noticed before, was leaning against the passenger door. Ace was standing on our trailer steps with his arms wrapped around himself. Mom was next to him crying. Derek walked between them, asking questions and writing things in a small notepad. He asked Nicholas what his business was here. Nicholas said he was just having a conversation with a friend. Derek asked Ace if that was true, and Ace shook his head. The second officer was talking to Mom, and she was gesturing wildly with her hands. Another car pulled up, and I recognized Noelle's sedan. She got out fast and walked straight toward where Ace was standing. I realized Allison must have called her right after I mentioned the phone in her office. Noelle went to Ace and started talking to him quietly. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw Ace shaking his head over and over. Noelle kept talking and put her hand on his shoulder gently. Ace's whole body started shaking, and then he broke down, crying. His shoulders heaved, and he covered his face with his hands. Noelle moved closer and said something else, and Ace just nodded. There was a knock on Chuck's door. Chuck told me to stay behind him and went to answer it. Derek was standing there with his notepad. He asked if he could speak with me, and Chuck said yes, but he was staying right here. Derek nodded and said that was fine. He asked my name and I told him. He asked what I knew about what was happening tonight. I explained about the burner phone in my backpack and how Ace had hidden it under the bathroom tile. I told him about the messages from Nicholas with threats about Amelia. I said I took pictures with Mom's old camera because I thought someone needed to see them. Derek's face got more serious with each thing I said. He wrote faster in his notepad. When I finished, he asked if he could take the phone and camera as evidence. I nodded and went to get my backpack from where I'd dropped it near Chuck's couch. Amelia was still asleep on the couch with the TV playing cartoons quietly. I unzipped the backpack carefully so I wouldn't wake her. The burner phone was wrapped in a plastic bag at the bottom. The camera was in the side pocket. I brought both to Derek and handed them over. He thanked me and said I did the right thing by keeping these safe. He put them in clear evidence bags and labeled them with a marker. Chuck asked what was going to happen now. Derek said they were taking Nicholas in for questioning and child endangerment. He said CPS was already here and would be handling the family situation. He looked at me when he said a detective would need to get a full statement from me tomorrow, but tonight I should just stay with Chuck where it was safe. I watched through the window as the second officer walked Nicholas toward the police car parked under the streetlight. Nicholas kept talking loud and fast, saying Ace came to him asking for work, that he never forced a kid to do anything. The officer told him he had the right to remain silent, and maybe he should use it. Derek stood nearby writing in his notepad and told Nicholas to save it for his lawyer. Nicholas's voice got higher as the officer opened the back door of the police car. He was saying something about how kids these days will do anything for money, and how was he supposed to know Ace was only 12? The officer put his hand on Nicholas's head and guided him into the back seat. The door closed, and Nicholas's voice got muffled, but I could still see him talking through the window. His hands were cuffed behind his back, and he kept leaning forward, trying to see what was happening with Ace and Mom. The police car's lights were still flashing red and blue across all the trailers, and I saw curtains moving in windows as neighbors watched. Mom was sitting on our trailer steps now with her shoulders hunched forward. Her head was in her hands, and she was rocking back and forth a little. Another officer was standing near her with his own notepad asking questions. I couldn't hear most of it, but every few seconds Mom's voice would get loud enough to carry. She kept saying she thought Ace had a real job, that some guy hired him to help with deliveries. The officer asked what kind of deliveries, and Mom said she didn't know. She didn't ask because they needed money so badly. Her voice sounded small and broken, nothing like the sharp, angry voice she used at home. She was crying and wiping her face with her sleeve. The officer kept writing and asking more questions. Mom gestured toward our trailer, talking about the bills and the broken heater and Amelia's medicine. She said she was just trying to keep her kids fed and warm. The officer's face didn't change, and he kept writing. Noel walked across the gravel driveway toward where Ace was standing near our trailer. Ace had his arms wrapped around himself and was staring at the ground. Noel said something to him and touched his shoulder gently. Ace shook his head over and over. Noel kept talking, and I saw her gesture toward Chuck's trailer where we were. Ace looked up at Chuck's window, and his eyes met mine through the glass. His whole face crumpled like a paper bag getting crushed. Noel guided him across the driveway and up Chuck's steps. Chuck opened the door and stepped back to let them in. Ace came through the doorway and stopped when he saw me and Amelia on the couch. His mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then he said he was sorry. He said it again and again, his voice breaking on every word. Amelia sat up from where she'd been dozing and rubbed her eyes. She looked at Ace and asked if he was in trouble. Her voice was small and confused. Noel knelt down in front of Amelia so they were at the same height. She told Amelia that Ace was going to be okay, that grown-ups were going to help now. Amelia asked if Ace had to go away, and Noel said yes for a little while, but it was to keep him safe. Ace covered his face with his hands and his shoulders shook. Chuck put a hand on his shoulder and guided him to sit in the chair by the window. Derek came back inside a few minutes later and asked to speak with Noel and Chuck in the kitchen. I stayed on the couch with Amelia and Ace. Through the doorway, I could hear Derek explaining that they needed to take Ace to the station to get his full statement. He said it was for Ace's protection, not to punish him. They needed a medical evaluation and to document everything properly. Noelle's voice added that she was starting emergency protective custody paperwork for me and Amelia. She said our home wasn't safe right now and they needed to find placement tonight. Mom must have heard this through the open door, because suddenly her voice got loud outside. She was yelling that she was our mother, and they couldn't take her children. The officer with her was trying to explain something, but Mom kept interrupting. She said she didn't do anything wrong, that she didn't know what Ace was really doing. Her voice was getting higher and more desperate. The officer's voice stayed calm and professional. He explained that she was arrested for child endangerment and obstruction. He said she prevented the school counselor and CPS from accessing Ace when they tried to do wellness checks. Mom's voice stopped suddenly like someone cut a wire. Through Chuck's window, I watched her face go completely white. She looked toward Chuck's trailer where we were and opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The officer took her arm gently and helped her stand up from the steps. He was explaining her rights while pulling out handcuffs. Mom started crying again, harder this time. She was calling for Ace, saying she didn't mean for any of this to happen. She said she was just trying to survive, just trying to keep her family together. Ace was still sitting in Chuck's chair with his face in his hands. He wouldn't look toward the window where Mom was. Derek walked Mom toward the second police car, and she kept crying and talking. She was saying Ace's name over and over. Derek opened the back door and helped her inside. Mom was still crying as the car pulled away, her face pressed against the window looking back at our trailer. The flashing lights disappeared down the street, and suddenly, everything felt too quiet. Noelle came back into the living room pulling out her phone. She started making calls, explaining the situation to different people, and asking about emergency placement. She told Chuck we might need to stay with him tonight until she could arrange something more permanent. Chuck said that was fine. He had a spare room and could make it work. He looked at me and Amelia and said we were welcome to stay as long as needed. Amelia was falling asleep again on the couch, exhausted from all the chaos and confusion. Her eyes kept closing, and her head kept dropping forward. I pulled her closer so she could lean against me. Noelle was on her third or fourth phone call, pacing back and forth across Chuck's small living room. She kept saying things like sibling placement and emergency intake and same school district. About an hour later, Noelle hung up and came over to where I was sitting. She said she found a foster home that could take me temporarily. Their names were Elias and Mandy Williamson, and they lived about 15 minutes away. They were coming to pick me up tonight. She was still working on placement for Amelia, but it might be a different home because not everyone can take a 4-year-old on short notice. My chest got tight, and I couldn't breathe right for a second. I asked if Amelia and I had to be separated, and my voice came out higher than normal. Noelle sat down next to me and promised she would arrange sibling visits as soon as possible. She said keeping us connected was a priority. She explained that emergency placement was just about getting us somewhere safe tonight. Longer-term plans would be made in the next few days once everyone had time to assess the situation properly. She said the goal was to keep siblings together whenever possible. I nodded, but I felt like I might throw up. Amelia was asleep against my shoulder now, and I didn't want to wake her up to tell her we were being separated. About 20 minutes later, a car pulled into the driveway. A man and woman got out and walked up to Chuck's door. Chuck let them in and introduced them as Elias and Mandy. They seemed nice, smiling gently and speaking in quiet voices. Mandy knelt down near the couch and said hello to me. She said they had a room ready, and we could stop for anything I needed on the way. Elias asked if I had clothes and things at the trailer that I wanted to bring. Noelle said she would walk over with us to help pack a bag. Walking into our trailer felt completely surreal. Just a few hours ago, we were eating pizza and watching TV, and everything was normal. Now police cars had been here, and Mom was arrested, and Ace was going to the station. The matching nail polish bottles Mom and Amelia used earlier were still sitting on the bathroom counter. Mom's shopping bags from this afternoon were on the floor by the couch. Ace's backpack was by the door where he dropped it. I went to the room I shared with Ace and pulled out my duffel bag from under the bed. I grabbed clothes and stuffed them in without really looking at what I was taking. Mandy helped me fold things so more would fit. She asked if I had a toothbrush and pajamas, and I nodded and got those too. Elias picked up a framed picture from the dresser that showed me and Ace and Amelia at a park from 2 years ago. He asked if I wanted to bring it, and I said yes. Everything felt like I was moving through water, like nothing was quite real. Derek came over while I was zipping up the duffel bag and knelt down, so he was at my eye level. He told me that what I did by telling Allison and giving him the evidence probably saved Ace's life. He said Nicholas has a history of violence, and the threats were real, that they found weapons in his car when they arrested him. I nodded, but I didn't feel brave at all. I just felt tired and scared and guilty all at once, like my whole body was made of lead. Elias picked up my bag, and Mandy touched my shoulder gently, saying we should get going. Walking out of the trailer felt wrong, like I was abandoning something even though there was nothing left to stay for. The police cars were gone now, and the trailer park was quiet, except for a dog barking somewhere. I climbed into the back seat of their car and watched our trailer get smaller through the rear window until we turned a corner and it disappeared. The Williamsons lived in a regular neighborhood with actual houses and streetlights that worked. Mandy pulled into a driveway, and they led me inside to a small bedroom with clean sheets and a nightlight plugged into the wall. The room smelled like laundry detergent instead of mold. Mandy asked if I wanted a snack, and I said no, but she made me a peanut butter sandwich anyway and put it on a plate with some apple slices. Elias sat at the kitchen table with me and explained their house rules in a gentle voice. Bedtime was at 9 on the school nights. I needed to do my homework before TV, and I should let them know if I needed anything. He said weekends were more flexible and they usually did something fun like going to the park or getting ice cream. Everything felt too normal and too weird at the same time, like I was watching someone else's life happen. After I finished half the sandwich, Mandy showed me where the bathroom was and gave me a new toothbrush still in the package. She said goodnight and left the bedroom door open a crack, so the hallway light came through. I changed into my pajamas and got into the bed with the clean sheets. The mattress was soft and didn't have any springs poking through. I lay there staring at the ceiling and couldn't sleep. My brain kept showing me pictures of Ace at the police station and Amelia with strangers and Mom in a jail cell. I wondered if I destroyed our family or saved it. I kept thinking about how Ace looked when they put him in the police car and how Mom cried when they handcuffed her. My thoughts went in circles for hours, the same questions over and over with no answers. The nightlight made shadows on the wall that looked like people moving. I heard a clock ticking somewhere and Elias coughing in another room. Around 4 in the morning, exhaustion finally pulled me under, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, sunlight was coming through the window, and Mandy was knocking softly on the door. She said it was time to get ready for school, and she'd drive me so I wouldn't miss class. I got dressed in clothes from my duffel bag that were wrinkled from being packed wrong. Mandy made me eat cereal and toast, even though my stomach felt sick. The drive to the school was quiet, except for the radio playing some talk show. When we pulled up to the entrance, Allison was standing there waiting. She walked over to the car and told Mandy she'd take me to her office first before class started. In her office, Allison sat across from me and said that Ace was physically okay and being checked by doctors and counselors. She told me I was incredibly brave and that none of this was my fault. I wanted to believe her, but it felt like it was my fault because I was the one who told. She asked how I slept and I lied and said fine. She gave me a pass to class and walked me to my classroom door. My teacher saw me come in and her whole face changed, getting softer. She didn't make me answer any questions during the lesson and let me sit quietly at my desk. I couldn't focus on anything she was teaching. The words on the board just looked like shapes, and I kept forgetting what page we were on. During lunch, I sat at a table by myself, because I didn't know how to act normal when my whole life just fell apart. A kid from my class came over and asked where I'd been yesterday afternoon. I said I had family stuff, and he nodded and walked away. I picked at my food and threw most of it away. The afternoon classes were just as bad, my brain refusing to hold on to any information. After school, I walked out to the pickup area expecting to see Mandy's car, but instead, Noelle was there leaning against her vehicle. She waved me over with a smile, and I felt my chest get tight, wondering what was wrong now. But when I got closer, she said she had good news. She found a foster home that could take both me and Amelia together. The Williamsons were just emergency overnight placement, but starting tomorrow we'd be with a family that has experience with siblings. Relief hit me so hard I almost started crying right there on the sidewalk. I'd see Amelia again. I wouldn't have to worry about her being alone with strangers. Noelle drove me to a house across town where Amelia spent the night. When we walked in, Amelia saw me and ran across the room crying. I caught her and held her tight, and she buried her face in my shoulder. She asked when we were going home, and I didn't know what to say. My throat closed up, and I just held her tighter. Noelle knelt down next to us and gently explained that we were going to stay with a nice family for a while until things got better. Amelia asked if Ace would be there, and Noelle said not yet, but we'd see him soon. That evening, Noelle took us to meet our new foster family. Harold was tall with gray hair, and Rosemary had glasses and a kind face. They seemed prepared for us, showing us to a bedroom with 2 beds already set up and some stuffed animals on the shelves. Rosemary gave us a tour of the house, pointing out where everything was and explaining that dinner was at 6 every night. Harold said we were safe here and they were glad to have us. The house smelled like cookies and had pictures of other kids on the walls, probably other foster children who'd stayed here before. Over the next week, we fell into a strange new routine. We went to our same schools but came home to a different house in a different neighborhood. Rosemary made dinner every night, and nobody had to give their food away or go hungry. Harold helped me with my homework at the kitchen table without making it weird or asking too many questions about our family. Amelia started sleeping through the night without crying or having nightmares. We had our own beds and clean clothes and toothbrushes that were just ours. It felt wrong somehow, like we didn't deserve normal things after everything that happened. On the 8th day, Noelle picked us up after school and drove us to a building downtown. She explained it was a supervised visitation center where we could see Ace. My stomach twisted the whole drive there. Inside, a woman led us to a room with a table and chairs and some toys in the corner for little kids. Then Ace walked in with another woman, and I barely recognized him. He'd gained a little weight, and the dark circles under his eyes were fading. His face looked less gray. He saw us, and his expression crumpled, and he rushed over and hugged us both at the same time. He kept saying he was sorry over and over. Amelia hugged him back hard and asked why he went away. I told him he saved us, and he started crying, really crying with his shoulders shaking. The woman supervising the visit stayed in the corner giving us space. Ace wiped his eyes and asked how we were doing, and if Harold and Rosemary were treating us okay. I said they were nice, and we had our own room. He looked relieved. We sat at the table and Amelia showed him a drawing she made at the school. Ace studied it carefully and told her it was beautiful. For an hour, we just sat together, and it felt almost normal, except for the woman watching and the plain walls and knowing we couldn't leave together. When the visit ended, Ace hugged us again and promised he'd see us next week. Walking out of that building without him felt like leaving him behind all over again. The next week, Noelle drove us back to the visitation center, and Ace was already waiting in the same room with the table and chairs. He looked different again, better somehow, like he was sleeping more and eating regular meals. His face had color in it, instead of that gray, exhausted look. The woman supervising stayed in her corner, and Ace sat down across from us at the table. He told us he was in something called a diversion program instead of getting charged with crimes because Derek and the prosecutor understood that he was used. He had to do counseling twice a week and community service on Saturdays, but if he finished the whole program without messing up, he wouldn't have a criminal record. His voice was quiet when he explained it, but I could hear something new in it, like maybe things could actually be okay. He said the counselor he was seeing was helping him understand that what Mom did wasn't normal and that he wasn't responsible for taking care of her like that. Amelia drew pictures while we talked and kept showing them to Ace. He studied each one carefully and told her they were beautiful. Then Ace leaned forward and said he needed to tell us something important about Dad. He said a social worker at the juvenile center helped him get in contact with some records, and they were trying to find Dad to see if he could take us. Dad had been paying child support whenever he had money and asking about us for years. Mom lied about him abandoning us. Dad actually tried to stay in our lives, but Mom made it impossible. She told the courts he was dangerous and unstable when he wasn't. She burned his letters before we could read them. Ace's hands shook when he told us this, and I felt angry and sad at the same time. All those years I thought Dad just didn't care about us, and it was a lie. Amelia asked who we were talking about, and I had to explain that we had a dad who wanted to see us. She didn't remember him at all since she was only 1 when he left. 2 weeks after everything happened with the police and Mom getting arrested, Noelle took us to a courthouse downtown for a hearing about temporary custody. We had to go through metal detectors and then wait in a hallway with hard benches. Mom was there with a lawyer who looked tired and carried a beat-up briefcase. Mom looked small and different without her makeup and nice clothes. She was wearing a plain gray shirt, and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She saw us and started to walk over, but her lawyer put a hand on her arm and shook his head. We went into a courtroom with wood panels and a high desk where the judge sat. The judge was a woman with glasses who looked at a thick folder of papers while we all sat down. She read through police reports and CPS findings and Ace's statement and the evidence from the burner phone that I gave to Derek. Mom's lawyer tried to say some things about how Mom was a single parent doing her best, but the judge held up her hand to stop him. The judge asked Mom directly if she had anything to say, and Mom just shook her head. The judge signed some papers and said the temporary custody order would stay in place. Mom didn't fight it or argue. Her lawyer whispered something to her, and she nodded. Then the judge looked at Mom and started listing things she had to do. Mom couldn't contact us directly at all, not even letters or phone calls. She had to complete something called a parenting assessment, where someone would evaluate if she understood what she did wrong. She had to do a substance abuse evaluation, even though drugs weren't the main problem. She had to go to counseling and prove she could provide a safe home before anyone would even consider letting us come back. The judge's voice was firm but not mean when she explained all this. Mom started crying silently and nodding. The judge asked if she understood, and Mom said yes in a voice so quiet I barely heard it. Watching her cry made my stomach hurt. I felt sad for her and angry at her at the same time. She was still my mom even though she did terrible things. Part of me wanted to run over and hug her, and part of me never wanted to see her again. Amelia asked why everyone looked so serious, and I didn't know how to explain it to a 4-year-old. A few days later, Noelle came to Harold and Rosemary's house after dinner and asked to talk to me and Amelia. She sat us down at the kitchen table and explained that Nicholas took something called a plea deal. That meant he admitted to what he did and agreed to go to prison instead of having a trial. He got sentenced to 5 years for drug dealing and contributing to the delinquency of a minor, which meant using Ace, who was just a kid. Derek had called Noelle to tell her the news and wanted us to know that Nicholas wouldn't be a threat for a long time. The other dealers who worked with Nicholas scattered after he got arrested because police started watching the trailer park more carefully. They increased patrols and made it harder for that kind of business to happen there. I felt relief wash over me, knowing Nicholas was locked up and couldn't hurt Ace or threaten us anymore. Amelia didn't really understand what we were talking about, but she could tell it was good news from how Noelle was smiling. A month went by with us living at Harold and Rosemary's house and going to our regular schools and having visits with Ace every week. Then one afternoon, Noelle picked us up with a huge smile on her face. She said she had important news and we should sit down. She found Dad. He was living 2 states away and working construction jobs. He'd been trying to save money for a custody battle, but couldn't afford a lawyer before. When Noelle contacted him and explained what happened with Mom and Ace and everything, he got a lawyer right away. Dad had been clean and stable for 3 years. He had a steady job and an apartment, and he wanted us to come live with him. Noelle said he cried on the phone when she told him we were safe and asked about each of us by name. He'd been paying child support whenever he could and asking about us for years, just like Ace said. Mom really did lie about everything. Dad was fighting to stay in our lives the whole time, and Mom blocked him at every turn. Noelle explained that there would be a process where the court had to evaluate Dad and make sure he could take care of us, but she felt hopeful about it. I didn't know how to feel. I barely remembered Dad, and Amelia didn't remember him at all. But the idea of having a real parent who actually wanted us and wasn't going to use us felt like something I didn't dare hope for. 2 weeks later, Noelle took us to the visitation center, but this time we weren't there to see Ace. We were there to meet Dad. My stomach was doing flips the whole drive over. We walked into a different room than the one we used for Ace's visits. This one had a couch and some toys and felt less official. Then a man walked in, and I recognized him from old photos Mom used to have before she threw them all away. He was tall with dark hair that was starting to go gray, and he had lines around his eyes. He looked older and tired, but when he saw us, his whole face changed. His eyes got wet and shiny, and he stood there for a second, like he didn't know what to do. Then he knelt down to our level and said our names. He apologized for not being able to get us out sooner and promised he was going to make things right. His voice cracked when he talked, and I could tell he meant it. Amelia hid behind me at first because she didn't know him at all, but Dad was patient and gentle. He didn't try to force her to hug him or come closer. He just talked softly and showed her a stuffed bear he brought. Eventually, she took a few steps toward him and accepted the bear. We sat on the couch, and Dad asked us questions about school and what we liked to do. It was awkward and emotional and strange, but also felt right somehow. The woman supervising the visit watched but gave us space. When the hour was up, Dad hugged us both carefully like we might break and promised he'd see us again soon. Over the next 2 months, we had visits with Dad every week while the court people checked him out. He passed all the background checks and home studies. A social worker went to his apartment and took pictures and wrote a report. His apartment was small with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, but it was clean and safe. The furniture was old, but everything worked. He had food in the kitchen and cleaning supplies under the sink. He showed us the bedroom he was setting up for us with 2 beds and a dresser. The social worker talked to his boss at the construction company, who said Dad was reliable and hardworking. Dad went to parenting classes on Tuesday nights to prepare for us coming to live with him. He learned about trauma and how to help kids who went through what we went through. Every visit he seemed more confident and more like a real dad. Amelia started calling him Daddy again, even though she didn't remember him from before. She just knew he was safe and kind and brought her little presents every time. The judge reviewed all the reports and evaluations and approved a transition plan. We would start staying overnight with Dad on weekends and then move in full-time after a month if everything went well. The overnight visits went fine. Dad cooked us meals and helped with homework and made sure we brushed our teeth. He didn't ask us to take care of him or make him feel better. He took care of us like a parent should. Finally, moving day came, and Harold and Rosemary helped us pack our stuff into garbage bags and cardboard boxes. Rosemary hugged us both tight and said we could call any time. Harold shook my hand like I was grown up and told me to take care of my sister. They'd been good to us, and I felt sad to leave, even though I was excited to be with Dad. Noelle drove us across town to Dad's apartment building. We carried our bags up 2 flights of stairs, and Dad opened the door. Ace was already inside, sitting on the couch. He'd completed his diversion program the week before, and the judge let him move in with Dad early. Seeing Ace there made it feel real. We were actually going to be together. Dad showed us our room where he'd set up the beds with new blankets and put our names on the wall in wooden letters. The kitchen was stocked with real food, not just ramen and generic cereal. We had milk and bread and fruit and chicken in the freezer. That night, we ate dinner together at the small table in the kitchen. Dad made spaghetti and garlic bread, and we all sat down at the same time. Nobody's hands were shaking. Nobody had to pretend everything was okay, because everything actually was okay. We were safe now, really safe, and nobody was going to use us or hurt us or make us do things kids shouldn't have to do. Amelia laughed at something Ace said, and Dad smiled watching us. After dinner, we sat on the couch and watched a movie together like a normal family. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe all the way. We could finally start healing together. That's it for this one. I'm so glad you stuck around, because it makes all the difference knowing someone's listening. I hope it added something positive to your day. Subscribe and come back for more.